What is it that the average Nigerian need to know is that there are assets
that we can unlock value
are,
from.
If you say you want to compute that now, to do our assets register, valuation and all of that, it's a lot of money.
Yes.
And whatever we can get there, we can use it to develop our infrastructure. You must be able to link it
with infrastructure,
with development of infrastructure. And our infrastructure level is still abysmally low.
You're welcome to the Economy and Politics Conversation. I'm Ottoabasi Abasiekong. It's a brand new year 2026, and this first edition will discuss Nigeria's budget 2026, gaps and opportunities for economic research. My guest joining me for this discourse is Architect Kola Ogunleye, Chartered Accountant and Public Policy Analyst. It's great to have you. Happy New Year.
Same to you, my brother. We pray it's going to be a blessed year.
Blessed year indeed. Thank you so much for making our time for this conversation. And of course, the most important conversation, amongst others, is the budget 2026, how it will be executed, the issues around it, and how it will impact the citizens. Let's begin with President Tinubu's 2026 budget appropriation bill presentation. In that presentation, he made a very important comment. He said that by March 2026, Nigeria will end the practice of multiple budgeting system and return to the system where projected revenue is spent on projected expenditure for the year. Very interesting because of the concerns raised. Are you convinced by this statement, and what must be done to address this recurring challenge of multiple budgeting system in the country?
I want to say good day to viewers at home and Happy New Year. The point that President of the country, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, made about putting a stop to the issue of multiple budgets and overlapping budgets is very, very key and germane to the execution of 2026 budget. If you realize where we are coming from, over the past years, before the advent of this administration, that's Bola Tinubu administration, we have had a situation whereby, for one reason or the other, implementation of the budget has not been in accordance with the provisions of the law that set up the budget. Don't forget that the appropriation that was presented is being worked on and will be converted into a law very soon. When you make a law, and you call it the appropriation law, it's expected that it is executed to the letter. But what we have had in the past is a situation whereby, due to so many reasons, but major one being what have been described by the IMF as forecasting errors. Our fundamentals are not accurately forecasted. That's what we call the underlying assumptions of the budget, whereby we project that we are going to make X trillion naira as revenue, and we are going to spend Y naira as expenditure. But you find out that the variance is so high at the end of the day. So those issues led to non-implementation of the budget in accordance with the law, the budget law. What he said is that there will be, if you read down the budget speech, is that there will be now serious budget discipline, and that all the relevant agencies and personalities involved have been told that this budget must be executed to the letter, not only within the intent of the law, but also within the time frame that is allotted to them. We are talking about the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Budget and Planning, the Director General Budget Office, and the Debt Management Office, and the Accountant General of the Federation, who has the responsibility to cash back the budget. And then, of course, we also have to talk about the chairman of FIRS, who is the chief revenue collector for the Federation. So those are the statements he made, and that's the background to the statement. But how can we reasonably say that these things will happen the way Asiwaju has directed? Yeah, that would depend on quite a lot of factors again. If you look at our budget and the assumptions underlying them right now, are they not still a bit overly optimistic? I will say that we are still being optimistic. This is a government that is anchored on hope. Okay, so it is bound to be optimistic, And then the government is also in a hurry to build on the success gained on the reforms that have been carried out, especially, you agree with me that most of the reforms have been in the monetary sector. And so he wants to build on that to see that we are able to carry out fiscal reforms. Don't forget that we have a tax law, as we speak, a tax act that is so comprehensive. The ultimate objective of the Tax Act is to ensure that we have higher revenue. A lot of people who have no business paying tax have been excluded due to low income, and also those who have the capacity to pay are now being taxed appropriately. Everybody is being asked to pay his fair share. And so also there are so many things that have been put in the act which will enable us to meet our revenue target, because revenue is very important. Now, when you now look at the expenditure side of it, we know that we have always been in a regime of deficit financing or deficit budgeting. Our expenditures are always higher than our revenue, and that will be backed up with loans. We have also projected that we're going to have a loan of so much to back up the gap, to fill the gap between the expenditure and the revenue. But if you begin to look at those figures and you begin to say, can we make this? Once any of those figures fail to be made, therefore the budget is not going to be executed to the letter. Don't also forget that we are moving a sizable percentage of the 2025 capital budget that has not been implemented. We are going to move it into 2026. And he is saying that whatever you want to do about those capital items that are being carried over into 2026 as we speak now, that they are done with within 3 months, so that we can now face 2026. As you jolly well know, that the period of execution of 2024 budget was extended till the end of last year. So we have a situation whereby that is closed. Whatever is not done by December 31st has elapsed. So what we now need to do is to look into what will happen from April 1st. Within those 9 months, plus the 3 months meant for 2025 conclusion, can we do all that is contained in the budget, all the expenditures? Because don't forget that all the expenditures that are in that budget right now, which is about 50 trillion. So we have a situation whereby the figure already encompass the carryover of capex only to this year. So if you look at all those things, you might say, as an analyst and a commentator, what I can say is that we will need a lot of prayers to be able to meet up with the president directive because it depends on factors that are not entirely within the control of the government.
The assumptions, you raised concerns about the assumptions. Yes. And let's look at the assumptions. 1.8 million barrels per day production, crude oil production. Crude oil benchmark of about $64.85 per barrel. And then, of course, we're looking at the exchange rate variance of 1,400 to a dollar. You say that is too optimistic, or?
I said it's a bit on the optimistic side. A conservative estimate, assumption, will have put our benchmark oil price at about $60 because of the situation, the global headwinds that, you find out that Ukraine is still at war with Russia, and that means a lot for the oil industry. These are what we call global headwinds that we do not have control over. What if this thing dropped to 62? 64 is, $62 is a big difference for somebody who is targeting 1.8 million barrels per day. That's about 3.6 million barrels per day that will be lost in terms of expected revenue. And if you look at what we're able to do till the end of this year, and we do the average, are we really in that territory? So if you also look at the 1.8 million barrels per day, we know that we can do 2.0 million barrels per day, but we've been a bit conservative by talking of 1.8 million barrels per day. But is the 1.8 million barrels per day achievable for 365 days?
There's been a period we've looked at 2 million barrels and we didn't.
Yeah, but look at even 1.8. How feasible is it? So these are some of the risks that the budget faces. And in any event, we want to do a lot. And we have already inputted a loan. The most certain thing that can happen is that we'll get all the loan we want from the capital market. But that's also put a lot of pressure on the other side of the equation, which is the private sector. If the government is borrowing so heavily they will be crowding out the private sector. Don't also forget that our NPR is 27%. So we are really borrowing at very high interest rate. And that's why our loan service, debt service is still very high. Sometimes we have seen a situation of 55%, 65% of the revenue going into. So the whole budget thing is a system. So we cannot look at it from only one point of view that, the president has directed. The directive is good on its own, but how critically, when we look at it critically, how easy will it be for us to be able to achieve the objective set in that budget? Talking about 15 trillion is now going to go into debt service this year. And those are the kind of calculations that are accurate. It can only go higher, depending on what happens. Oh, fine. People say most of the loans are going to be local loans. But local loans have this problem of a high interest rate in terms of repayment. So there is room for a lot of optimism, but it must be what I call guided optimism.
So you talk about guided optimism. Let's look at what we discussed last time we had you on the program, the need for government to invest in our human capital development. And those indicators are always health, education, and you can put in infrastructure. Let's look at what they're allocating to education, 3.52 trillion naira, and health, 2.4 trillion naira. Both of these, put them side by side, are not even up to 10% of the budget. Security is the highest, 5.42 trillion naira, about 9% of the budget. This is still a challenge.
If you look at what we are talking about here now, I will shock you with a statement now. And that is to say that security has become a part of the human capital element that we are talking about. If you look at what is happening to our schools, if you look at what is happening to our mosques and churches, and what is happening to our communities, So really, for a country like Nigeria that is challenged by security situation that is really, really bad, then we can say. But having said that, the most important element of human capital, as we know it, in terms of categorization, it remains health and education. I know that that's quite low, but what we need to understand is that when you look at the situation in which the country has found itself, it will be left to those who are going to review the budget to begin to adjust it upwards a bit. I think this is what the president thinks is the best thing, but we can't do much about security. But we can still do a lot on other elements of that. For example, our infrastructure is still hectic. Yeah, and what can we do if you look at some of the ambitious projects we have, like the Lagos Calabar Coastal Road, like a lot of rail lines that need to be developed. Most of our trunk A roads are in bad shape. They need to be, you see, so if you look at all those things, you'll find out that actually, what is 50 something trillion if you look at it in terms of dollars?
So one major feature of every budget is revenue, anywhere in the world. Yes. How would you fund it? And we're targeting 34.3 trillion naira revenue.
Yeah.
And capital expenditure, like we discussed, 26.08 trillion naira. But one issue that's a major concern has been the opportunity to unlock value from our assets. Dr. Yoteriba, notable economist, has raised this. ProShare, if you look at ProShare's 2026 Economic Outlook report, we've highlighted the importance of unlocking value from our national assets and state-owned enterprises. The president mentioned that they will look at their government-owned enterprises, but again, we're not hearing that drive to push MOFI, Ministry of Finance Incorporated, Bureau of Public Enterprise, to say we are targeting listing of state-owned assets or enterprises through the capital market to unlock value. Architects, have we not come to that point? Have we not come to that point? Because where else can we fund the budget and fund the economy?
I think that Nigeria is due for a review of its revenue model to ensure that we have a model that is robust and that is not based on taxes only. I do not think taxes alone can do the job for this country. I will go about this way. Even if you look at our GDP and the percentage of tax revenue that we have, is still very low. Okay, I think it's still under 10% or so. Now, if you now look at our income profile in this country, I know that we really have been talking about, low income earners will not pay tax and all of that. But the bulk of the people of this country, whether they are self-employed, they are in SMEs, and they fall into the category of low income earners. So in a situation where you have very low income, how do you utilize those kind of people's tax to drive big time economic projects? Like some of the things we are talking about here, all these big projects should have been done through PPP, which the president referred to. But I think there is need for political will to go into that direction. And I also believe that the fear of going into privatization is because of the kind of what I call the common belief, that once you go into, you are selling national assets and all of that. So we need to embark on serious communication and engagement with the citizens. Because don't forget that during the campaign in 2023, these were major issues. And those who are on the side of selling assets were vilified, and told that, look, go and sit down. We won't allow you to sell it again. Yes. The one we sold before, you took so much and all of that. We need to be transparent. We need to be courageous enough to say that some of these assets are also, lying fallow, wasting. And
real estate lying fallow.
We need to do a comprehensive evaluation, and then create a pipeline of assets. That, because what is our FDI? You won't believe that on the FDI scale, we have dropped from number 9 to I think number 14 or 15 now, with Egypt on top of that list, according to some of the this. So where is the FDI? You know, and what kind of FDI are we saying? Are we talking about? These are some of the sources. These assets that are lying fallow. It will take time, and we need to prepare for it. Prepare the assets for sale, get buyers to come into it, and link those sales to specific projects within the country. So that is one way we can generate revenue, because don't forget, as we are having low revenue, we are going into debts. And that can also be a way out of debts. Especially when you know that you can't do much based on your income taxation. And we have also said we want to encourage our companies. We have dropped the rate of taxation for corporates to maybe 25%. So if that is what we are faced with, then you will agree with me that we need to look into that direction. And I align myself completely with those who say that we should begin to do some kind of
unlocking of wealth from assets.
Well, let's
call financialization.
Let's put it the way it is. Sell some of these things and realize money that you can use for development. I mean, instead of you see, fiscalization, financialization. These are all terms from financial analysts. But what is it that the average Nigerian need to know is that there are assets
that we can
that are from. If you say you want to compute that now, to do our assets register, valuation, and all of that, it's a lot of money. And whatever we can get there, we can use it to develop our infrastructure. You must be able to link it
with infrastructure,
with development of infrastructure. And our infrastructure level is still abysmally low.
So as a policy expert and, of course, advisor, you're a chartered accountant, you understand how important tax is. And now we have a tax act in place. But there are concerns of possible alterations of what was gazetted and what the Joint Committee of the National Assembly signed and passed before it was sent to the President. So I just want to get from you, the issue of policy credibility is very crucial for any government. What is your take on all this development and what must be done? Because we're looking at the implementation already.
What has been alleged on the floor of the House by one of the members is that the document that is gazetted is not what they passed. So I have held the view that we should hold on. There's an investigation that has been, committee that has been set up by the House of Reps. Is it true? Because I don't think the executive is saying that what they have there published is not what they passed in the House. If they now find out that that is the truth, then they must return it to the Parliament for necessary upgrade. If they want some of those issues there to be incorporated, then incorporate. And if it is that the Parliament has closed action on that, then they should expunge those provisions that are said to have been, that are said to have found their way into the document, because it is important to have a credible act, especially as we rely on this new act to drive the new revenue environment that we want to have in Nigeria. So it's bad enough that this has been alleged to have happened. We will still see it at this point. I will still see it as an allegation that require to be investigated. But definitely, because of some of the provisions that are affected, there is a very quick need for there to be an intervention and a reconciliation of what we have in the law passed by the National Assembly and what is now officially the law. Because what is being gazetted, what it means is that it become the law. So that is what one can say safely at this time. even as the investigation continues.
But this committee, you say House of Reps, are they working with the Senate? Because it's supposed to be joint.
No, once the House of Reps committee finishes its work, the Senate may also need to set up its own, or they may adopt the recommendation of the other committee. There are counterpart committees and institutions and departments within the Senate set up itself. But whatever the House of Reps pass, that's what they take to the Senate. And they may adjust it at the Senate level, which will mean that they will have a joint committee that will now look at it. So you can't say Senate position is different from the National Assembly's position must be harmonized and passed on to the executive for assent and publication. But what we need to emphasize is the utility of this new law, that it has now made it possible for more people to come into the tax net, and for people who are not really capable to be excluded from the tax net until they get to such a situation where they can get in there. And the other good thing about the new tax law is that it is the most progressive tax law so far, emphasizing the fact that people of means, wealth, rich will pay their fair share, where those who do not have much will either be excluded from the tax net or they will pay just a little. So, which makes life easy. Instead of making the bulk of the tax payments to be the burden, to be on the poor folks. That's what is called a regressive tax. So this one now is going to be a progressive tax, and we need to thank Ashwaju and his team for that. Even as they are looking for revenue, they are looking for it in the right places.
Thank you very much, Architect Kola Ogunleye, Chartered Accountant and Public Policy Analyst, for this interesting conversation, looking at Budget 2026 and, of course, the gaps and opportunities for Nigeria's economic reset. Thank you once again for the time. We're looking at what you've said, the need to unlock revenue.
Yes.
The need for us to ensure that we have a strong progressive tax system.
Yes, very important. And of course, we need to look into the issue of unlocking wealth from what appears to be our dead capital right now.
That's a core agenda for this administration. And we'll keep track on it. We will continue to do the advocacy and ensure that that's done. To our viewers, if you want to get further insights on this conversation, visit the ProShare website displayed on the screen and follow our social media platforms to engage. Till we come your way again, keep tabs with socio-economic developments around you. And this is wishing you a fabulous year 2026. I'm Ottoabasi Abasiekong. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.